The Judge. Learn more right after this.
Your life is filled with opportunities to show the world you can take charge. It's waking up each day with a mission. It's working each day toward a goal. It's choosing to rise. It's charging forward with a purpose. It's changing the course of your life and taking charge of your future. If you're ready to be a take charger, enroll at Georgia Highlands College today.
Welcome to Community Watch. Greg,
Doc,
how are you?
just fine, brother, and yourself?
Good, good.
You ready for round two?
I am. All right, so the election is May 22nd.
Correct.
It is there's some primary stuff going on, but we also have our Superior Court judge,
Partisan.
nonpartisan, right? Nonpartisan.
But everybody's partisan, right?
I
But
don't
anyway.
know. I don't know. But this is a nonpartisan race. So we are interviewing the two candidates. We've interviewed Kay Witherington, and in this show, we're about to interview Emily Matson. And we talked about this before, but this is much different from other elections where we've had like 24 candidates to talk about and had so little time with each one, and now we have a little more time. So I think that might be beneficial for us and for voters.
I agree. I think having more time gives people a chance to really see the candidate at a different level than just kind of rushing through questions. So we'll see.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break here and come back with our candidates, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
If you're looking for a new pet that your family will cherish every day, consider adopting from a shelter. Shelters are the best places to find a new pet. That's where you'll discover healthy, loyal, and loving animals, eager to become a part of your family. A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet, so bring home your new buddy today. To find out more, visit theshelterpetproject.org.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're very happy to have with us today Emily Matson, candidate for Superior Court Judge. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
We'll go ahead and get started with the questions.
Yes. What is your judicial philosophy?
That's a very, very good question. I think when I think about the philosophy of a judge, I think it has to be founded in what was intended with the separation of the different parts of the government. So you've got the legislature, that makes the law, the executive that enforces it, and the judiciary, which kind of balances the application of the law to people who might be at its beckoning for judgment. So I think my judicial philosophy is based first and foremost in the fact that a judge is not authorized to make law, but is supposed to apply law to circumstances, and has to be limited by that separation of the powers as set up both in the federal government as well as the state government. And so with the foundation of being required to apply the law, a judge is also to be limited by his or her impartiality, to really have a position of sitting as an impartial judge where they are to judge. In criminal cases, you have a jury which decides guilt, but the judge has certain places where he or she exercises discretion, and he or she should be doing that with an impartial, open perspective, only limited by the law, guided by the law in what they're doing. And I think that there are just simple mores that apply to judges, that should apply to judges, to be honest, to be ethical in their dealings, to not have discussed or violated any of the rules of ethics outside of their courtrooms. So it's kind of a combo, I guess I would put it that way.
All right. Please tell us why you want to be a Superior Court judge.
Well, the past 12 years, I have represented people here in Rome, in Floyd County. And actually, I've been and litigated in 21 different counties. But I'm from Rome, born and raised here in Rome, and have based my practice and my life here. And a couple of years ago, when I realized that we would have some judicial openings in our community, I started to kind of ponder, who should take their place, and actually had a couple of what I would consider to be wise counselors kind of say, hey, you should think about this. And so based upon all that kind of swirl of information in my mind and my heart, my husband and I started praying about it, because the role of judge isn't just the day-to-day grind of deciding cases and letting people go through the process, but it's also a position of leadership in our community. It decides the direction of where we go. Does our community have confidence in this system that happens on a day-to-day basis? And so we just decided, my husband's name is Patrick, and we finally decided through both counsel as well as just our own feeling of confidence that I would do this. And so my hope and my heart is to bring my experience being a representative of people on just a menagerie of legal issues into the courtroom. My mind, I think I have a pretty good mind, and definitely just a spirit of impartiality and of wanting people to believe in the way the system works, that justice can be had here locally. Those are what drive me to want to obtain this position and serve.
Okay.
Where did you go to law school? And please give us a summary of your background as a lawyer.
Okay. Well, I left Berry College. I graduated from college there, and went on to Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And something unique about Regent, it's a small school, it has a faith background, but all of Regent's professors have actually practiced law. And so I was, jettisoned out of law school with the perspective of going in and serving and being an advocate for my clients. And that certainly had, just put me on a great foundation to jump into starting my law practice with a firm here in Rome called Smith Shaw Maddox. Smith Shaw, been around for 100 years, just a great environment of mentors. It allowed me to kind of jump in and get my feet wet in just a host of different legal issues, everything from habeas corpus defense work to medical malpractice defense to opening small businesses, filing corporations. I definitely spent most of my time doing a lot of family law, divorces, custody, adoptions, legitimations, which is one of my favorite things to do, where you take a parent who is not a legal parent and you give them both the opportunity to parent, but also the responsibility of parenting. And so I was there with that firm for about 4.5 years, and then I jumped into practice with my husband, Patrick, and we've had a small practice, just the two of us, for the past, let me do the math here, 7.5 years. So I've been in practice for 12 years and just done almost everything. Is that the question you asked me?
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
You're just letting me talk a lot, so I want to make sure I cover it all.
All right, it's my turn now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. How many cases have you tried, and what types of cases were they? What percentage of your work has been in civil cases as opposed to criminal cases?
Okay. I answered these questions for the Judicial Nominating Commission a couple of years ago, and I don't remember at that time I really thought hard because I was putting my percentages in writing at that time. My primary practice has been as a civil litigator. So, and y'all are probably aware, whether it's criminal cases or civil cases, most cases settle before trial. There's a proverb in the Bible that talks about, settle your matter before you go to the judge. And it really is. I was sitting in court this morning, Judge Larry Salmon, gives the scalpel versus the meat cleaver example. And he says, please try to settle your case with the scalpel fine-tuned, or I'll settle it with a meat. I think he said a meat, I don't know, usually meat cleaver or meat hammer. And it's true, you try a case to the end, and that's pretty much what you feel like you've come out with. But I would say, I would estimate of my civil litigation experience, we've probably resolved about, 80%. You have so many different types of hearings along a civil calendar that, it just depends on the types of hearings, whether it's a motion for contempt or a temporary hearing. A lot of temporary hearings, you do go forward, especially if you're dealing with custody, because people who are dealing with their children just are not willingly going to agree not to see their kids most of the time. So it's a hard factor. I've tried a couple of contract and civil litigation cases. So I've done family law, contract civil litigation, done some jury trials, both in a couple of different counties, including Floyd County. My criminal experience is everything from traffic tickets to some misdemeanors to some felony cases. I've resolved all of those, been able to kind of help guide clients to understand, whether you're guilty of the actual crime that you've been charged with, or maybe you aren't guilty of anything, but you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. We figure out how to get them out of that situation. So my experience, I could keep talking, but I can't put actual figures on it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I can estimate, but that's the best I can do.
That's fine.
No problem. What would you do to improve the quality of justice in our community, including faster disposition of cases?
Well, I think you're presuming with your question that faster disposition is better for the people. And I think that what's really important, and it's hard, as a lawyer who's in the courthouse, almost every day I step over the courthouse for one purpose or another. And I think what people don't get a taste of if they're not involved in the day-to-day system is the fact that expeditiousness does not necessarily mean justice. And so I certainly think, it never helps for cases to languish, for people to not know what is going to be the outcome of their very, tenuous and stressful situation, whether it's a divorce or, I had a will situation where, we sought to basically undo a will that was procured in a woman's, incompetency. That case took 4.5 years. And so, what I'd like to see is that unnecessary delay does not occur. And I'll give you a prime example. Sometimes the lawyers are just not ready. And I can understand that the first time you sat down a case and you try to try it. And I've one particular case I'm thinking of right now. I've been trying to bring it to trial for 2 years. I can understand when a lawyer's not ready the first time. But when a lawyer's not ready the third, fourth, fifth time and then decides to dovetail back into the processes of trying to get more evidence, it's time for the judge to say, we're going forward, we're having a trial. And so it is in the hands of the judge to decide, are we done with the delay? Are we going to bring these people to final closure? So I think basically judges should be aware, and what I would hope to do is to be aware and not allow unnecessary delay. But if the delay is necessary, for example, sometimes I get appointed by courts as a guardian ad litem, and I will be the person that goes out on behalf of the judge, investigates and makes a recommendation on custody. Well, sometimes that can take a month, sometimes it can take 6 months because circumstances change and children get sick. I have a case right now. I'm not the guardian ad litem, but one of my children in one of my custody cases has been affected by cancer. Well, the custody claim didn't go away. The reasons one parent thinks the other parent shouldn't have custody hasn't gone away, but the case needs to be paused to let that circumstance play itself out. So those are necessary delays. But I think judges just making sure that they hold attorneys' feet to the fire, they hold investigatory processes to the fire. One of the things that causes delay, and we saw this recently in this horrible case where this man was charged with killing his cellmate, Denver Allen. That was pretty famous. They had to do an incompetency review of that man. Well, yes, if I'm a judge, I want to know that the people in front of me are competent to stand trial. There's a whole reason to go out and make sure that's the case. But then if I order his competency to be determined, I'm kind of at the mercy of the services provided to determine that competency. So I think it's just, you can't put any particular circumstance in a box. But again, for judges to not allow unnecessary delay to occur and to really desire to bring an expedited process and it to occur in a regular fashion is what's needed. And you know, as a civil litigator, as having been in 21 different counties, seeing how different courts do the process, I think I'm going to bring some really good ideas and insight to those cases that need to be pushed on forward.
All right, we are going to take a break here, but we will be back with more discussion with our candidate. Do not go away.
Your life is filled with opportunities to show the world you can take charge. It's waking up each day with a mission. It's working each day toward a goal. It's choosing to rise. It's charging forward with a purpose. It's changing the course of your life and taking charge of your future. If you're ready to be a Take Charger, enroll at Georgia Highlands College today.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're having a conversation with candidate for Superior Court Judge, Emily Matson, and we're going to pick up with our questions now. What is your position on mandatory sentences? Would you like to have sentencing discretion in all cases, or do you favor mandatory sentences for some crimes?
That is such an interesting question because of this. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning about the separation of powers. You know, and the mandatory sentences that are put in place are mandatory because of the authority of the legislature. And so I've actually stood at the rope at the state capitol and lobbied in the past. I've stood shoulder to shoulder with a juvenile court judge one day, lobbying on a particular law. So, you know, as I sit here today, I do have opinions about some of our sentencing. You know, part of the role of the judiciary is not to kind of go out and stake out a position, especially not when running for office, on the policy of that. And so I'm a little bit hamstrung by the law and by the ethics of that. I certainly believe that our law was made in a way that if it doesn't work, it should be changed. And so to the degree that I find as a judge, if, you know, providence plays itself out and I sit on that position, then, you know, I think I'll be open to the fact that there may be certain things that are in the law today that need to be changed. Actually, they're very likely are things that need to be changed. I've got some thoughts about things that I'm not happy about, but again, as a judge, it would not be my job to change the law. It would be my job to apply it. But I'll say this to you, just in case you don't know this, you know, there's so many areas in the law that judges have sole discretion, complete and utter discretion. For example, what parent gets what kid, how much alimony is going to be paid, what type of visitation and access or safety precautions will be put in place for any particular child situation. And, you know, there's no mandatory on any of that. It says the standard is in the best interest of the child. And so where there is discretion, I intend to fully use that in light of the experiences that I've had. So, but when it comes to the sentencing, like I said, I personally am aware of things that just don't work or one-size standards that don't fit all. And we'll see how those play themselves out if I sit on the bench.
All right.
How familiar are you with available alternatives to prison and the appropriate criteria for those programs?
Yeah. So in my criminal practice, I've had the privilege of trying to advocate for just results for my clients, and many times that has taken us pre-sentencing. So there are a lot of alternatives that are offered to people who yes, have not behaved themselves correctly, but it's usually most of the time where it's a first criminal, incident situation. And I'm very grateful for those opportunities for my clients, especially when they're really young and, maybe there's circumstances where they have mental health issues, addiction issues, just really bad upbringing. Those opportunities avail themselves. And so we try to take advantage of those whenever at all possible. You are aware, of course, of the new mental health court that we have here in Rome and the brand new drug court that we have. And I'm really supportive of both of those. Not so much because I can point to statistics here in Floyd County that show that they are working. The statistics are very narrow. But I think everyone would agree that the straight up criminal processes that we have need tweaking. We've got people that are being incarcerated that's not the place for them. And we certainly, there's never an excuse for violating the law on its face. But do we need to take into consideration, for example, do you have a young person that has a mental illness, issue that's never been diagnosed? And should that be considered when we discuss what should go into the consequences for their breaking the law? Absolutely. So I hope that we will continue, and I hope we'll be seeing the fruit of these new attempts to remedy some of these situations. There's one other thing I want to point out, and we have a local organization, One Community United, who recently featured. They didn't really sell it as this, but it basically was marketing something called restorative justice. And restorative justice is the idea that you bring victims into the process, further into the process of deciding what would be the appropriate outcome of the criminal action. And I've read a couple of articles, I've heard this testimony here locally, and read a couple of transcripts of these proceedings going forward. I think they're really, really fascinating, and to the degree that we can look at some of that here in Floyd County, I would like to do that.
All right. You've already mentioned the mental health and drug courts. Do you feel that they're beneficial, and would you like to change them in any way to increase their effectiveness? Yeah.
Like I said, my position so far is the jury's out on those courts. I'm hopeful. I'm hearing from the judges that preside over those some incredible things. And I certainly think that the more resources you can put to those type of issues, the better. I've got an idea that there are resources that don't have to necessarily come from the state's pocket, but would come from local interests who just say, hey, we want to make a difference in our community. And so I'm aware that there's not been a lot of additional local resources that have been put to those efforts, and so would love to see if pouring that into the mix would make them even more fruitful. But again, I think whether or not, I think you asked the question, should they be changed? And I don't know that we're far enough into our local drug court and mental health court to decide what changes need to be made that I know of.
In sentencing, would you treat men and women differently?
Well, I am a woman. No. I think that's, and this is such an interesting political race because we have a female judge leaving, we have two women that are running for the position, and I think that the issue is settled that men and women, different races, different socioeconomic classes, disabilities, and so forth should be treated equally. That is why I'm running. I have had the experience of representing every type of person in this community, rich, poor, all different types of ethnicities, all different types of educational backgrounds and issues. I think it's because of those experiences that I can sit there in this bench, 12 years of advocating for every type of person. And if they walk into my courtroom, whether it's the prosecutor or the criminal defendants, whether it's the private lawyers in the civil disputes, whether it's the dad who's cheated on the mom or the mom who's having a Facebook affair, I've seen all those people. I've advocated or dealt with them across the board. And I think that bringing those experiences where I can take their cases and spin them around and understand when they say, I live in this community, I come up with this background, this is why I'm in front of your court for these reasons. Because I've represented them, if I sit as judge, I will be able to receive them impartially. And so whether it's a man or a woman, it shouldn't matter as far as the sentencing goes. It's the crime. It's in law school, they called it malum in se, their intent. That has to be addressed, the planning that went into the crime. But as you talk about sentencing, you've asked me a bunch of criminal questions. Do not forget that a large degree of what goes on in the Superior Court is also civil. And so I think it's important for us to realize that that judgment that's going to be exercised or to treat people fairly or mistreat people has to be examined in light of the broadness of what the Superior Court does. I kind of went off question there, but I know you'll forgive me.
No, that's right.
Are our courts unfair to those who cannot afford attorneys?
That's such a, it's such an issue that I've dealt a lot with that where, let's say I get in a case, I mean, your typical contract case, is brought about because someone's not paying. Well, if they can't pay the contract, whatever it may be, they likely can't afford their lawyer. Unfortunately, in civil disputes, they are not going to be given a publicly funded attorney. And criminal disputes, criminal issues, offenses, they're only going to get a publicly funded attorney if they fit within the guidelines. And I've got a case right now where my client does not fit within the guidelines. He certainly doesn't have enough money to hire me either, but he has gone out and scraped it up. And so, the people that I have dealt with who have been, because remember, I'm there if someone's hired me to be there, right? Or if I've agreed to represent them pro bono. So they're getting fairness in that situation by someone stepping in to help them. But where, we do have a public defender system. I'm good friends with a number of public defenders, as well as assistant district attorneys. And I think we're trying to do our best. But I'll tell you, whether those people get their fair shake ultimately falls on the judge. We cannot use the excuse that they had a bad lawyer to deny them the justice of the court system. And I do hear that as an excuse sometimes when people get a really horrible outcome. And, like I said, in criminal cases, the guilt that sets up the sentence is in the hands of the jury, okay? So I don't know what better fairness you can get than the constitutional guarantee of a jury of your peers, an impartial jury of your peers. That's the best system we've got. It's the best system in the world to determine that issue. But when you come to the sentencing and how the process of the court case goes, that's all in the hands of the judge, as you know. If certain evidence will come into play and so forth. And so, it is hard. I do find that judges tend to be very deferential to people who are unrepresented. It can be frustrating as a lawyer sometimes because you want them to make that person follow the rules. But I would hope to carry the balance of justice and mercy on that issue with whether or not people have to stand for themselves or be represented by someone that's qualified.
Okay.
Well,
Do we have time for
I
another
don't think we
question?
do. I think that's it.
Okay.
You saying I talk too much? No more questions?
Good.
You're an attorney.
I'm an attorney. I'm paid to talk, right?
All right, we're going to take another break here. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
$7,000 high school students drop out every school day. That's a line of desks more than 4 miles long. We can keep students in school. Visit boostup.org and take the first step.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We've been talking with Emily Matson, who is a candidate for Superior Court Judge in the election that is coming up on May 22nd. May 22nd. And we have interviewed her opponent, Kayann Wetherington, on a separate show. So look for both of those programs. They'll be playing right up until election time. And of course, also be on our YouTube channel. So I want to thank our candidate for being with us, both candidates actually for being with us, and make sure you vote this time, well, all times. And don't forget this one. There's some other stuff too, but this is an important,
Very important.
important one. All right, thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time on Community Watch.